Happy Wealth Wednesday. Alexa, so excited to have you here. What was your first ever investment? Do you remember what or who got you started?
HerHouse. They are this recycling platform. They're really trying to change the way we recycle hard to recycle items or items that would normally not be recycled. And they have a lot of different tactics for doing that. They also have piloted some really cool initiatives with major corporations to, help them with their recycling initiatives. And yeah, I bought into one of their earliest crowdfunding campaigns, and I haven't really kept up with it. I should, but that was one of like the earliest investments, like other than just really like investing in like my 401k. That was I really remember that, and I've tried to do some similar things over the years, like really investing in brands that I believe in. A lot of them at the intersection of sustainability and consumerism or consumer goods, or because just that's something that I really feel strongly about.
Fantastic. And how and why did you get into your space now? When I say that, I mean the crazy world of Web3. How did this all start?
I run this branding studio, and a lot of our brands are pretty small. They're working with small budgets, and when the iOS changed, like a lot of them couldn't afford to compete anymore. Their dollars were not stretching as far in terms of acquiring customers, and their sales were suffering. And I was like, this is just going to continue to happen. Like there has to be a better way to not only acquire an audience, but actually like build a community that goes beyond just like consumption. And I had, I was invested a little bit in crypto. I had a lot of friends getting into the NFT space. And it was around NFT, I think NFT NYC last year, or maybe a little bit before that I just went to, a couple of events and started talking to people, and really like talking to people who weren't just in it for, flipping NFTs or necessarily in it because of actual like cryptocurrency investments, but were in it for more of this like community aspect. And that was something that I was always really passionate about in terms of like bringing community building into brand strategy. And so this felt like a really, really incredible opportunity for brands to connect with their users and to really build community more authentically. And as a marketer, as a brand strategist, I was like, I need to be involved in this. I need to be at the forefront of it. And so it was sort of a professional calling that brought me to the space. But why I stayed was for very much personal reasons. Just the energy of Web3, the people that I have met. I like to call it like a doorway, right? I found the door, and then I like needed to get like through the door, and I, met a really amazing woman who is actually now my co-founder of HerHouse, Candace. She was my buddy, and kind of getting me to get my first MetaMask, and really, get my money from my Coinbase to my MetaMask, and things along the way, like those dumb questions. And I think now, even since I got into the space, more safe spaces for asking those dumb questions have emerged. But as someone who was like, I'm an intelligent person. Why can't I figure this out? It can be really intimidating, and just having that person that you trust to help you and guide you through it. That was Candace. She's still that person for me, who answers all my dumb questions. But yeah, she was also very integral in getting me really into the space.
That leads perfectly into the next question I have for you, which is to understand the role that you play in the wealth space and why it's important, especially with now creating HerHouse.
Yeah, so I feel like the wealth space, it's really stacked against us women, right? The current financial system, even just the way wealth is talked about. And I think, Web3 and crypto are huge opportunities for us to change that for women globally. And I think, it presents opportunities for solving challenges that just go beyond like wealth as we think of it, like in terms of like invested wealth, right? Or institutional wealth, and like really like going into just like wealth overall and wealth in general. And sort of, I think that as for HerHouse, which is, the way we define it is really like an ecosystem of women and non-binary builders who are navigating the Web3 space and are here, right? They've gotten into Web3 and they're sort of like, well, now what? Like, where do I go? How do I make the best decisions? How do I ensure that I'm investing my time, but also my money smartly? How do I make sure I'm using the right tools and choosing the right partners? And so HerHouse is trying to solve for that, right? We're trying to be a facilitator. We're trying to be a partner. We're trying to be a friend, right? A lot of why women come to us and sort of stay part of this community is for the support and for the accountability as well. And so we're not really doling out any investment advice directly, but like there are conversations happening in our community around what projects to support, what wallets to use, what communities to buy into, and also just in general, right? Like the larger sort of DeFi picture or investment world, those conversations are happening as well. So I see us as almost like a facilitator for those conversations and hopefully bring together a group of women who will support each other in navigating those hard choices.
I'd be curious what the most exciting thing you've learned about that you would want others to know, especially as you've embarked on this journey of building community and what that looks like and how it's different in Web3.
You don't need to run really fast. And I think like building communities sustainably is something that we've really been focused on. We have a Discord. It's not very active, but that's not because our community isn't active. It's just because our community is happening in other forums. It's happening in living rooms, right? Like that's the other, reason HerHouse started from us, Candace and I really wanting to create this space, wanting to create this forum, wanting to have this community. There being definitely some other really amazing women's communities out there, but us wanting to, create something that was slightly different enough to really create our own tribe. And because we felt like as women also like builders, like we needed something a little bit different. And that's not to say we aren't also involved in some really incredible other women's communities. But really, again, like a community for communities, right? For women who are building their own things. And so we kept meeting women who actually had the same challenge that we had, right? They were trying to find that. They were like, wait, I'm building this thing and I don't know who to always go to. I don't have a co-founder. I don't have a team. I'm just a woman building on my own. And we were like, well, we've got a space for you. And it just started around, my dining, where I'm sitting right now. I remember sitting in this seat and looking around and being like, wow, we just created it. We created it right here in my home. And it has since morphed into the same thing happening in other women's homes, right? Our last event in New York City, which was again an event that preceded another event that we were all going to support another woman who was in the community, right? And we do that regularly. A lot of our, again, like we're a decentralized community and that like there can be multiple things happening that are hosted by members of the HerHouse community that we just try to divide and conquer to show up and support. And so that sort of like, I think tactic, which was, I don't know if it was intentional from the get-go, but it has become now very intentional, which is like slow, sustainable growth and like really like meaningful support and like being able to ensure that we can show up for each other, which if you have a community of 10,000 members is harder to do. The way we show up for our members who aren't in real life is by supporting their initiatives online, right? Like always trying to hop onto their Twitter spaces or always trying to facilitate more partnerships and collaboration.
Wait to hear your answer to this question because I'm sure you're just seeing so many great people and projects and companies. But is there a company or a person that inspires you in this space right now and why?
Oh, that's really hard. And I feel like I should have known that this question was coming. Sherry Hu of Water and Music. She is, pretty amazing. And I just love that she's brought this like intentionality to her community and what she's creating and also how she's bridged Web 2 and Web 3. I think that also like the concept of music, there's a lot of different platforms out there for music in Web 3. Music is a really huge passion of mine, which is why personally, like I find her to be really inspiring and also like being, just being so thoughtful about the information that she's putting out there about music and Web 3, right? I think there's a lot of hype around Web 3 and there's a lot of content that's being created that's repurposing or repackaging content that's already out there, and not necessarily creating anything new, or also not doing like the due diligence to really back it up. And I feel like, you know, she's done a really incredible job. And I just think really like set a tone, right? Like, and I would love to see more organizations out there with that same emphasis on like research and quality, and quality of content, but also that like how community can stem from that. But we met at South by Southwest. She was on a panel, and we just ended up like having lunch together. I have a lot of idols in Web 2 that I've never had that opportunity with. And like your Web3 idols can actually just become your friends. And that's what I think is so cool about HerHouse. Like Sherry is you know, she's in our NYC group chat. Jen Liu, who's on the eWealth team, she's in it. But like, you know, Maggie over at SheFi, and there are, you know, Izzy, founder of Women in NFTs. Like there are so many women, and I feel like I'm not giving enough shout outs, but like those are the women, like the women in our community are doing such cool stuff, and it's a short list, and I love seeing it grow. My friend Natasha, who's in the group, we met at another Web3 event, and she's building a sexual wellness brand that is all about like cultivating like meaningful intimacy with your partner, but like it's going to, you know, as it grows, it will become other things, but she's already looking at how a DAO can play a role in this. And so, yeah, so sorry, that was a very long-winded answer. No, there's no single one thing that I can point to right now, but there are so many exciting things happening that I just continuously am finding out more and more and more. And I just love that we can support even a handful of them. There's no sort of set, here's what you have to do to be part of this. But if you do show up to it, like people show up to support you. And I think that's what's also really cool. It's not like a big ask, right? That we're to be part of it, right? It's just really organic and really wonderful. And I will absolutely share the list. I feel bad now. I'm like, there's so many women that I'm like, oh, I should have shouted them all out. They're all doing really amazing things, and they've all really become like friends, and that's also really amazing. And I think that like that closeness that we are cultivating is also something that like it's really empowering, and to, you know, really have that sort of support group has been really personally helpful to me, and we hope that we can share that with as many women as possible.
One of our last questions that we ask is, you know, what advice would you give to somebody getting started?
Yeah, I would say, you know, it can be really, again, like really overwhelming. Find that door, right? Like for a lot of people, like the door was NFTs. For a lot of people, that's not going to be the door right into the space. So if you're sort of out of the space, outside of it, like kind of looking in, figuring out like, how do I get in there? Like whatever is meaningful to you, like there's a place for it in Web3, right? Like if you're passionate about climate change, right? There's a Web3 community for that. If you're passionate about fashion, right? There's so many things, right? Like this is just, again, in the same way that the internet is relevant for everything, Web3 is relevant for everything. I think if you're like a woman founder who's already in the space, like really like finding that, if you're feeling like you don't have that buddy, like find that buddy that is just so, and I think that's true for like pretty much any woman entrepreneur, regardless of, you know, if you're building in Web3 or not. Like if you're a solo founder, it can be really lonely. So I think like, again, that is also true in Web3, but even if you're not a woman builder, like just having that buddy is really impactful. And then I think like not being afraid to reach out, because like I said, there are women in this Web3 world that I'm like, I was looking at from afar a few months ago being like, wow, I would love to know her. Like you are one of those women. And now here we are on this call, hopefully collaborating in the very near future together. And I think like everyone that I've met is so nice, right? And really they want to welcome you with open arms. And so just to remember that is, I think, really important.
Like anything else we should know, how can people follow what you're building, you personally, Atomic 8, and then also HerHouse, especially if they're based in New York City?
LinkedIn is the best way. I mentioned this earlier. I still love LinkedIn. It's where I have the biggest audience too, which is really funny to me. I have way more followers on LinkedIn than any other platform. But also Twitter. I'm Alexa_Lombardo. I'm not really on Instagram, but either one of those, either LinkedIn or Twitter, you will definitely find me. Atomic, you can find that on my LinkedIn profile as well as my Twitter profile. We're not as active, but because we're more behind the scenes, and that's kind of how I like to keep it. But we do have an Instagram. You can see some of our work on there. It's just Meet Atomic #8. But more importantly, HerHouse. We are HerHouse_IO on Twitter, and we are on Discord. We have a website, HerHouse.io, where you can learn a little bit more about us. You can get access to, or you can find our Notion dashboard. And there is just a little forum that you can, we're actively opening new chapters pretty soon after NFT NYC, because we're doing a big push around that. We have had interest in LA and San Francisco as well as London. And so we'll see what sort of the next phase out will be. But if you're in New York, we're really just sort of on a group chat right now, and I will absolutely add you to it if you reach out to me directly or to HerHouse, or if you fill out the form that's on our website.